780 grams of rice per day. Rotten. With worms. With mold. And you eat it because that's all there is. Frank weighed 80 kilograms when he was captured. A year later, 45. His ribs protruded so much you could count every single one. His eyes had sunken into his skull. But you know what he did every night? He hunted snails. In the jungle. With his bare hands. And roasted them over a fire just to get a drop of protein. And then he sat down and wrote in his diary, 3 more died today. I will survive. I am American. I must tell the story. This skeleton with an American spirit outlived all his tormentors, and his diary sent them to the gallows. Want to know what happened to Fujita's diary? How was it used in the trial of war criminals? Subscribe. In the next videos, I'll reveal details that weren't included in this video. Like and subscribe so you don't lose the channel. October 20th, 1921, Lawton, Oklahoma. A child is born to Frank Fujita Sr., a Japanese immigrant who changed his name from Tsuneji after arriving in America in 1914, and Ida Pearl, a white waitress from Illinois. The boy receives his father's Americanized name, Frank Jr. He inherits his father's dark hair and his mother's fair complexion. He inherits his father's love for America and his mother's determination. But he also inherits something else. Something that will nearly kill him. Blood. Half Japanese, half American. In 20 years, this blood will make him a target. In the steaming jungles of Java, in the freezing dockyards of Nagasaki, in the propaganda studios of Tokyo, his blood will mark him as neither friend nor foe, but something far more dangerous. A traitor to both sides. This is the story of one man's descent into a hell where the enemy wore his own face, where his name became a weapon against him, and where the only thing standing between him and execution was a diary hidden in the walls. A diary written in blood and desperation. This story is based on the published memoirs of Frank Fujita. Interviews, war crimes trial testimony, medical reports and documents from the National World War II Museum, the National Museum of the Pacific War, and the University of North Texas Press Archives. Every name is real. Every date is documented. Every horror actually happened. November 10, 1941. Abilene, Texas. 20-year-old Sergeant Frank Fujita Jr. stands at the train platform, his duffel bag heavy on his shoulder. Around him, 500 men from the 2nd Battalion 131st Field Artillery Regiment load their equipment onto separate trains bound for Fort Mason, California. The air smells of diesel fuel and cigarette smoke. Somewhere down the line, someone is playing harmonica. Fu, the nickname his high school friends gave him after a cartoon cat he drew for the school newspaper, adjusts his cap and watches the chaos with the eye of an artist. He makes mental notes. The way the light catches the brass buttons, the tension in the men's shoulders, the forced laughter that doesn't quite reach anyone's eyes. His best friend, Roy McCullough, the one who convinced him to join the Texas National Guard 3 years ago, claps him on the back. "You ready for this, Fu?" "Ready as I'll ever be," Fu replies, though his stomach churns with something between excitement and dread. His father had signed the permission slip when Fu was just 17. He wanted his children to be 100% American, Fu would later write in his diary. And what better way to be in the service of his country? The recruiting officer had questioned his citizenship, had consulted the high school civics teacher, had debated whether a half-Japanese boy could really be American. Finally, they decided he was a natural-born citizen. Now he is machine gun sergeant in E Battery, having transferred specifically to ship out with the 2nd Battalion. They are heading to a destination codenamed Plum. Everyone knows it means the Philippines. The train lurches forward. Abilene shrinks in the distance. Fu does not know he will never see Texas as the same man again. November 21st, 1941. San Francisco Bay. The USS Republic sits at anchor, her gray hull cutting through the fog like a ghost ship. At 17,100 tons, she is the largest vessel in what will be called the Pensacola Convoy. Originally built in 1903 as a passenger liner, she has been requisitioned 3 times by the Navy. Her holds now carry not passengers but soldiers, ammunition, and 12 antiquated French 75mm artillery guns. Fu boards with E-battery. The ship smells of paint and oil and sweat. Men jostle for sleeping space. The Republic's crew has recently mounted 4 3-inch guns and 1 5-inch gun on deck, hasty additions made during a rushed dry dock stay. No one says why the urgency. The convoy assembles. The heavy cruiser USS Pensacola as escort, the transport ships Holbrook and Meigs, the cargo ships Admiral Halstead and Coast Farmer, 4,600 National Guard and Air Corps personnel. Enough firepower to reinforce General Douglas MacArthur's forces in the Philippines. On November 27th, they reach Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, for resupply. Fu and others get shore leave. They drink in Honolulu bars, marvel at the tropical flowers, send postcards home. The Pacific Fleet sits at anchor, battleships gleaming in the harbor. It looks invincible. November 29, 1941. The convoy departs Pearl Harbor at dusk, heading west into the Pacific. They sail south to avoid the Japanese-held Marshall Islands. Cruising speed is 10 knots, matching the slowest ship. The journey should take several weeks. Fu settles into shipboard routine. He plays poker. He drinks 190-proof medical alcohol smuggled from the ship's stores. He draws cartoons. He writes in his small notebook, the beginning of what will become his secret diary. During daily drills, he trains on the ship's anti-aircraft guns. December 6, 1941. The convoy crosses the equator. They are now in the southern Pacific, somewhere between Hawaii and Fiji. The ocean stretches endless in every direction. The sky is clear. The ship rocks gently. As the days passed and we became accustomed to the battle drills, Fu writes, there were still those who were convinced that this trip was some sort of glorified sightseeing trip. That illusion has approximately 18 hours left to live. December 7th, 1941, 07:55, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. A date that will live in infamy. The convoy is somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, far from land, when the ship's loudspeakers crackle to life. The announcement comes like a thunderbolt. Japan has bombed Pearl Harbor. The Pacific Fleet, those beautiful battleships they saw just 8 days ago, lies in ruins. 2,403 Americans are dead. 1,178 of them went down with the USS Arizona, which exploded when a bomb struck her forward magazine. Fu stands on deck, stunned. Around him, men curse, shout, pray. The reality crashes over them like a wave. They are at war. They are in the middle of the enemy's ocean. They are heading toward Japanese-held territory with minimal escort. It was almost unbelievable that such a thing could happen, Fu writes, and that Japan would dare to attack the mighty and invincible United States. The shock was compounded by the knowledge that we had just left there a mere 8 days before. And here we were, out in the middle of the ocean, not too far away, and most of our fleet had been sunk in the raided Pearl. But for Fu, there is another shock, a deeper one that cuts to the bone. A few days later, during the daily information program, the ship's announcer asks over the loudspeakers, "Is there a Jap on board this ship?" The word hits Fu like a physical blow. Jap. The same word his father heard when he tried to naturalize, when American laws barred Asians from citizenship. The same word that made his father move his family to towns with few or no Japanese Americans, so his children could be 100% American. Fu makes a decision. He writes a reply for the announcer to read the next day. I do not know if there is a Jap on board or not, but there is an American Army sergeant who happens to be half Japanese. I know, for I am that person. Sergeant Frank Fujita. The announcement is made. No one questions him further on the ship. But Fu remains apprehensive for a while. He has made himself visible. He has declared his blood. He does not yet know what that will cost him. December 1941. The convoy's destination changes. The Philippines are under attack. Japanese forces are overwhelming MacArthur's defenses. Operation Plum is abandoned. The convoy diverts to Suva, Fiji for fuel, then continues to Brisbane, Australia. On December 23, 1941, the convoy reaches Brisbane. The men disembark and march through the city in perfect formation. Australians line the streets cheering. Most of their own men are fighting in North Africa. These Americans are the first Allied reinforcements they've seen. Fu spends Christmas 1941 in Brisbane. He writes in his diary about the Australian girls, the good beer, the feeling of safety on solid ground. But the safety is temporary. Before New Year's Day, new orders arrive. The 2nd Battalion will board the Dutch freighter Bloemfontein and sail for Java in the Dutch East Indies. They are to provide ground support for the remaining American bombers, the B-17s of the 19th Bombardment Group that escaped from the Philippines. On January 11, 1942, exactly 35 days after Pearl Harbor, the Bloemfontein enters the port of Surabaya on the island of Java. The 558 men of the 2nd Battalion, 131st Field Artillery, become the only American ground combat unit to reach the Dutch East Indies. They have entered the crucible. January to March 1942. Java, Dutch East Indies. Fu and the battalion are stationed at Singosari, an army camp with an airfield. The situation is dire. The Dutch have only antiquated World War I-era French 75mm guns to offer. When the men emerge from the warehouses with their equipment, they look like they've raided a museum. Fu fills his diary with observations, encounters with British, Dutch, and Australian soldiers in local bars. Being from Texas, he notes proudly, he can drink the British soldiers under the table. He sketches the wildlife that wanders into his tent. He draws the faces of his fellow soldiers. February 3rd, 1942. Fu's first bombing raid. This was our first raid, and we were fascinated by the ghostly formation of planes, he writes. Their white undersides made them hard to see distinctly, and they looked like ghosts. We watched as they opened their bomb bays and saw the bombs leave the planes in long strings. It all seemed fairy-like and unreal. The whole scene did not seem threatening. War and bombing raids were something that we had read about, that happened to other people in other times and places, and had nothing to do with us. That dreamlike detachment will not last. February 28, 1942. The Japanese 16th Army invades Java at multiple points: Merak, Bantam Bay, Araton Wetan, and Kragan. 45,000 Japanese troops pour onto the island. March 7, 1942. Battle of Surabaya. E Battery, Fu's unit, supports Dutch troops in the Surabaya area under British Major General H.D.W. Sitwell. The main body of the 2nd Battalion supports the Australian Black Force, a brigade built around the 2/3 Machine Gun Battalion and 2/2 Pioneer Battalion at Luilang near Bandung. The Australians later praised the Americans' top-hole artillery fire, but the situation is hopeless. The Dutch are outnumbered, the British are outflanked, the Australians are surrounded. One day during the fighting, Fu is enjoying a cold beer at a local establishment when a sergeant bursts in with news. American reinforcements have arrived. Fu's heart leaps. He jumps up to greet them. He emerges and freezes. They are not American soldiers. They are Japanese troops. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst, Fu writes. I was hyperventilating, and I fired off 2 more wild shots without hitting anything. I thought to myself, if I didn't pull myself together, I would be a goner. A Dutch officer observes him reloading. The officer gestures toward another Japanese soldier approaching. What would you do if you looked down your rifle and saw one of your... He doesn't finish. The implication hangs in the air like poison gas. Fu's reply is instant. He had better shoot before I did. He takes aim. His second shot kills a Japanese soldier. The first of his blood he will spill. March 8, 1942. The Dutch Governor-General surrenders the East Indies to the Japanese. The terms are unconditional. Any further resistance will be met with instant reprisals against the civilian population, including women and children. March 12, 1942. British, Dutch, and American forces surrender under General Sitwell's orders. Fu and the rest of E Battery lay down their weapons. Of the 558 men who landed on Java just 2 months ago, 534 become prisoners of war. 23 transferred to the 19th Bomb Group and were evacuated. 2 were killed in action. 3 died when their parachutes were shot by Japanese fighters. The 534 Americans are joined by 368 survivors of the USS Houston, which was sunk during the Battle of the Java Sea on February 28th. Together, these 902 men become the core of what will be called the Lost Battalion. They are marched to a prisoner camp at Jarmarkt, a fairground near Batavia, modern-day Jakarta. For the next 7 months, they will be held here with thousands of British, Dutch, and Australian prisoners. Fu enters the camp. The gates close behind him with a sound like a tomb sealing. His friends immediately gather around him. Their faces are tight with fear. "Fu, you have to change your name," one of them urges. "Use a Spanish name, Filipino, anything." "They'll find out you're Japanese," another says. "They'll shoot you." Fu looks at his hands. His father's hands. His mother's fingers. "I was really in anguish," he writes, "for I thought the same thing, and the temptation to change my name was almost overwhelming." He thinks of his parents back in Abilene. His father, who tried 3 times to become an American citizen and was denied each time because of his race. His mother, who married a Japanese man despite the prejudice. If he changes his name and dies, they will never know what happened to him. His death will be reported under a fake name. He will disappear from the world as if he never existed. "I felt that if I changed my name and I should die for any reason during the war, then, if my death were reported at all, it would be reported under my assumed name and my parents would never know what happened to me." He makes his choice. He keeps his name. Frank Fujita. Sergeant Frank Fujita. His blood, his identity, his death sentence. April 29, 1942, Jarmarkt Prison Camp. The Japanese celebrate the Emperor's birthday by allowing a rare visitor's day. Local Dutch women attempt to bring supplies to the prisoners. Those who try to push packages through the gate are savagely beaten by guards. Most prisoners request uniforms to replace their tattered, sweat-soaked clothing. Fu makes a different request. He asks for art supplies. The Japanese forbid the uniforms. Fabric can be made into rope. Rope can be used to escape. But paper? Ink? What harm can that do? They let him keep the drawing materials. Fu does not tell them what he plans to draw. The secret diary begins in earnest. Small notebooks, scraps of paper, anything he can write on. He sews the pages into his clothing, into his gear, into the seams of his cap. He writes by candlelight when the guards are not watching. He writes in the latrine. He writes in the few moments between work details. He documents everything. Names of guards, names of prisoners, names of the dead, dates, times, locations, the quality of food, the quantity of beatings, the number of men in the sickbay. And he draws. He draws the faces of his captors, the emaciated bodies of his fellow prisoners, the positions of torture, the layout of the camp. Every page is a death sentence if discovered. Japanese regulations are clear. Prisoners are forbidden from keeping records. The penalty is execution. But Fu cannot stop. The artist in him cannot stop seeing. The American in him cannot stop documenting. The man in him cannot let these horrors go unrecorded. If they could not sway me, being part Japanese, over to their side, he will write later, and I had to prove to all the POWs I was thrown in with that I was 100% American. The diary becomes his proof, his weapon, his act of resistance. October 1942. After 7 months at Yarmarkt, Fu and other prisoners are loaded onto ships bound for Singapore. They are taken to Changi, the former British military base on the eastern peninsula of Singapore Island. Changi is a sprawling complex of barracks, prisons, and camps. Before the war, it housed the British Army's principal forces in Singapore. Now it holds tens of thousands of Allied prisoners: British, Australian, Dutch, American, New Zealander, Italian, Malay. The conditions are better than Yarmarkt. The prisoners have some autonomy. They organize concerts, establish a, quote, university, maintain gardens and latrines. The Japanese largely stay outside the camp perimeter, letting British and Australian officers maintain internal discipline. But the horror follows. The Japanese employ captured British soldiers as guards. Fu and the other Americans view these men as traitors. The British guards serve their American and Australian prisoners maggot-infested rice, when they serve them at all. Food rations are cut. The men begin to starve. Diseases multiply. Fu develops severe dysentery. His body purges itself of everything he consumes. He loses weight rapidly. The camp doctors have no medicine. They have improvised surgical tools, homemade antiseptics, but no antibiotics, no proper treatments. He is allowed a brief hospital stay, then discharged back to the same deplorable conditions that caused his illness. The cycle repeats. The prisoners scavenge desperately for food. They hunt jungle snails. They roast whatever seeds they can find. They eat things that would make a healthy man vomit. Fu documents it all. Late November 1942. The Japanese decide to relocate some prisoners to Japan proper. The empire needs labor for its war industries, the dockyards, the mines, the factories. Fu and approximately 1,000 other prisoners are selected. They are crammed into the hold of a ship. The voyage will take them from Singapore through the South China Sea, past Taiwan, to the southern coast of Japan. These transport ships will become known as hell ships. The holds are designed for cargo, not humans. Hundreds of men are packed into spaces meant for 50. There is no ventilation, no sanitation, minimal food, minimal water. The heat is suffocating. The smell is indescribable. Men die during the passage. Their bodies are left among the living for hours, sometimes days, before guards remove them. Dysentery spreads. Men soil themselves where they sit. There is nowhere to move. Fu survives the voyage. Many do not. The exact number is not recorded in his diary. They arrive at Nagasaki, Japan. From there they are transported to an island off the coast, Koyagi Island. This is Fukuoka POW Camp No. 2, established on October 25, 1942. The camp sits adjacent to the Kawanami Brothers shipyard. The prisoners will be slave laborers. They will build ships for the Imperial Japanese Navy. Fu looks at the camp. Wooden barracks, wire fences, guard towers. The shipyard looms beyond, its cranes and scaffolding like the skeleton of some mechanical beast. The temperature is dropping. Winter is coming. He is 10,000 miles from Texas. December 1942 to October 1943. Fukuoka POW Camp No. 2. The work begins immediately. Each morning, the prisoners are assembled and marched to the dockyards. They construct ships for the Japanese war effort. They move heavy staging planks, rivet steel plates, haul materials. The work is backbreaking. The work at the dockyards was so hard, the weather so cold, and the food rations so inadequate. It was surprising we were able to withstand the demands made upon us, Fu writes in his diary. We would return to camp in the evening, bone-weary and barely able to walk. The effects were accumulative, and as time went on, we became weaker and even more susceptible to the ravages of disease and malnutrition. The official Japanese ration for prisoners performing hard labor is 780 grams of rice per day. For light workers and convalescents, 530 grams. For officers not performing physical labor, 350 grams. But these are the official numbers. The reality is less. Fish, vegetables, meat occasionally appear in the early months. The Japanese cooks prepare what food there is. But by October 1943, the rations are drastically reduced both in quantity and variety, according to official post-war reports. The weather is brutal. Winter in Nagasaki is cold. The prisoners are, quote, very inadequately clad. They lack sweaters, wool shirts, socks. Many cases of pneumonia develop. According to camp records, quote, during the first winter the death rate was extremely high, averaging about 1.5 deaths per day, with 3 as the maximum for the entire camp. The principal causes of death: pneumonia, dysentery, beriberi, infections. Beriberi, a disease caused by vitamin B1 deficiency, becomes endemic. There are 2 forms: wet beriberi, which causes heart failure and swelling, and dry beriberi, which attacks the nervous system. Quote, all through the night men would scream out from the effects of dry beriberi, Fu documents. Every cell of our bodies was crying out for rest, but this was not to be had. The pain is constant. The hunger is constant. The fear is constant. Every night the prisoners perform what Fu calls the grayback ritual. They remove all their clothing and meticulously search every seam and wrinkle and remove the big grayback lice that nest in the fabric. The lice carry disease. The lice are everywhere. The latrines are outside. Prisoners are only allowed to use them at specific times. If a man needs to relieve himself outside those hours, and with dysentery rampant, many do, he faces beatings from the guards. Fu continues to draw. He creates watercolors depicting the scenes around him. One painting, later titled Commonplace Beatings, shows prisoners being struck by guards. The title says everything. Beatings are commonplace. Violence is routine. The diary grows. Pages accumulate. Fu hides them in his clothing, in his gear, in the walls of the barracks. He knows that if discovered, he will be executed. The Japanese have made this clear. Keeping records is forbidden. But he cannot stop. June 1943. Fukuoka POW Camp No. 2. It happens during morning roll call. A Japanese guard is reading the work crew roster. He calls out names in accented English, marking attendance. American names, British names, Dutch names. Adams. Here. Brown. Here. Fujita. The guard pauses. He looks at the roster again. He looks up at the assembled prisoners. Fujita, he repeats. Fu's blood turns to ice. The guard begins walking down the line, examining each prisoner's face. He is looking for something specific, something he recognizes. Japanese features. Fu stands rigidly at attention. He tries to make his face blank, tries to hide what cannot be hidden. His father's eyes, his father's cheekbones, the blood that betrays. The guard reaches him, stops. Their eyes meet. The guard sees it. Recognition floods his face, followed by something else. Something that looks like hatred. Fu has spent over a year avoiding this moment. At Yarmarkt, his Japanese heritage went unnoticed. At Changi, no one looked closely. On the Hell ship, everyone looked the same. Skeletal, filthy, barely human. But here, standing in the morning light of Nagasaki, the guard sees what Fu cannot hide. Fujita is a Japanese name, the guard says. Fu says nothing. The guard grabs his arm and drags him out of formation. Other prisoners watch with horror-stricken faces. They all know what this means. Fu is taken to the camp commander. The commander's office is a small wooden building near the main gate. Inside, a Japanese officer sits behind a desk. His uniform is crisp. His face is unreadable. An interpreter stands nearby. Fu is shoved inside. He stands at attention, trying to control his breathing. The commander studies him for a long moment. Then he speaks in Japanese. The interpreter translates. Fujita is a Japanese name, is it not? It is, Fu replies. Then you are Japanese? I am an American citizen. The commander's eyes narrow. Your name and blood are Japanese. I have other blood than Japanese, Fu says carefully, and I am a native-born American. The questioning continues. The commander wants to know why a man with Japanese blood is fighting for America. He wants to know about Fu's father, his family, his loyalties. He wants to understand what Fu is. Fu answers with pro-American responses. He emphasizes his citizenship, his oath to the United States, his identity as an American soldier. The commander grows angry. He does not understand. In Japanese culture, blood is everything. Ancestry determines identity. A man with Japanese blood is Japanese, regardless of where he was born. To the commander, Fu is a traitor to his own blood, a race traitor, an abomination. The punishment is announced. Fu will learn to read and speak Japanese. He will be educated in the proper ways of his ancestors. His American corruption will be cleansed. The Japanese lessons begin immediately. Fu is assigned to a corporal for instruction. Every day after his shift at the shipyard while other prisoners rest, Fu sits with the corporal and studies Japanese characters. The corporal uses a combination of instruction and intimidation. When Fu fails to grasp a concept, the corporal strikes him. Fu fails deliberately. He cannot read the characters. He cannot pronounce the words. He cannot understand the grammar. He is a terrible student. The corporal grows increasingly frustrated. His student is not learning. His student is making him look incompetent. His superiors will not be pleased. One day, during a lesson, Fu butchers a particularly simple phrase. The corporal's face contorts with rage. He draws his sword. The corporal grabbed his sword and made a violent pass at Fu's neck, the record states. Fu sees the blade coming. In that frozen instant, he sees his death, beheaded by a frustrated language instructor, his body dumped in a mass grave, his parents never knowing what happened. He jumps. The sword whistles past his throat, missing by inches. The corporal freezes, the sword extended, his chest heaving with rage. Fu stands pressed against the wall, his heart hammering. For a long moment, neither moves. Then the corporal sheathes his sword and resumes the lesson. The failed language instruction gives the Japanese another idea. If Fu will not learn Japanese, perhaps he can use his English capabilities for the empire. Fu is brought before the commander again. This time, the proposition is different. They want him for propaganda work. The Japanese military runs radio broadcasts targeting Allied forces in the Pacific. The most famous program is the 0 Hour, hosted by women announcers that American soldiers call Tokyo Rose. The broadcasts mix popular American music with propaganda messages designed to lower morale. But they also use English-speaking prisoners, men who can be coerced or broken into reading scripts that praise Japan, condemn America, urge Allied soldiers to surrender. The Japanese see in Fu the perfect propaganda tool. A Japanese-American soldier, captured fighting against his ancestral homeland, now repentant and urging his fellow Americans to stop their futile resistance. If they could not sway me, being part Japanese, over to their side, Fu would later write, I had to prove to all the POWs I was thrown in with that I was 100% American. Fu is given scripts to review. They contain anti-American statements, praise for the Japanese Empire, calls for American soldiers to surrender. He is expected to read these over the radio. He reads the scripts. Then, he does something brilliant. He writes new scripts, but his scripts are deliberately terrible. They are stilted, unnatural, filled with phrases no real American would use. They are useless for propaganda purposes. The Japanese officials review his work. They cannot understand why it does not sound right. They do not have the cultural context to recognize that Fu is sabotaging them. After multiple failed attempts to produce usable propaganda, the Japanese give up on him. He is sent back to the dockyards. But now every guard in the camp knows what he is. August 6, 1943. Fukuoka POW Camp No. 2. Note: this is exactly 1 year and 3 days before the atomic bomb will fall on Hiroshima. The date has no significance yet. Fu is working in the shipyard, moving large staging planks for ship construction. The work is brutal. The planks are heavy. His weakened body, ravaged by months of malnutrition, struggles under the weight. 2 guards are watching him. In their eyes, he is not just a prisoner. He is not just an American. He is a Japanese man who betrayed his race. A man whose ancestors were samurai, who chose to fight alongside the White Devils. His very existence is an insult. Fu moves too slowly. His arms shake. He staggers under the weight. The guards approach. I did not know that pain could attain such a high degree of intensity, Fu will write in his diary that night. My entire head seemed to explode. My senses spun around and seemed to pulsate in and out, bordering on unconsciousness. They pummel his face with their fists. They kick his chest. They take a large bat and strike his spine. Repeatedly. The pain is indescribable. His vision blurs. His hearing fills with a roaring sound. His spine, that central column that holds a man upright, screams with agony. I thought that I could not possibly take another blow, he writes. I kept telling myself, do not make a sound. Whatever happens, do not fall to the ground. Do not let them know that they have broken your spirit. He does not cry out. He does not fall. He stands there swaying, blood streaming from his face as they beat him. He stands because to fall would be to admit defeat. To cry out would be to give them satisfaction. When they finally stop, he returns to work. His spine will never fully recover. The damage will haunt him for the rest of his life. That night, he writes everything in his diary. He draws what happened. He documents their faces. October 1943. The Japanese decide to transfer Fu again. His reputation has spread. The half-Japanese prisoner who won't break. The traitor who won't repent. The stubborn American who keeps refusing to acknowledge his blood. They send him to Omori Prison Island. Omori is a man-made island in Tokyo Bay near Yokohama. It is the main camp for the Tokyo region, holding high-value prisoners, captured officers, downed pilots, men with intelligence value. The journey from Nagasaki to Tokyo is a blur of trains and pain. Fu's back injury makes sitting agony. Every bump, every jolt sends spasms through his damaged spine. He arrives at Omori in late October. The camp sits on a dredged-up patch of earth in the bay. Wooden barracks, guard towers, the Tokyo skyline visible in the distance. Here, he will spend the next 2 years. Here, he will hide his complete diary. Here, he will wait for rescue or death. November 1943 to August 1945. Omori Prison Island, Tokyo Bay. Omori holds approximately 600 prisoners at capacity. Americans, British, Australians, Dutch. Among them are men who will become famous. Louis Zamperini, the Olympic runner whose B-24 crashed into the Pacific. Marine Major Gregory "Pappy" Boyington, the flying ace who was shot down over Rabaul. But Fu is not interested in fame. He is interested in survival. The conditions at Omori are harsh but survivable. The prisoners are put to work at the nearby Nippon Sun Company, loading and unloading ships. The work is hard, but less brutal than the Nagasaki dockyards. The guards are strict. Beatings remain common. But the immediate threat of execution that hung over Fu at Fukuoka is slightly less intense. He uses this time productively. At Fukuoka and earlier, he kept his diary in fragments, small notebooks, scraps of paper, pages sewn into clothing. But at Omori, he realizes he needs to consolidate everything. If he dies, if the camp is destroyed, his scattered pages will be lost. He obtains a ledger book. How he gets it is not recorded, perhaps through bribery, theft, or trade. Into this book, he begins transcribing all his previous writings. He combines the scraps into a single coherent narrative. Then he hides it in the wall of his barracks. The building is wooden. The walls have gaps, spaces between boards. Fu finds a spot and secretes the ledger inside. He memorizes the location. He tells no one. Once, a guard searches the barracks. The guard is looking for contraband, knives, tools, anything that could be used for escape. He searches Fu's belongings. He finds a small notebook. Fu's heart stops. But the guard is looking for weapons, not words. He glances at the notebook, sees writing he cannot read, assumes it is personal, and moves on. Fu nearly collapses with relief. The diary survives. August 1945. The war is ending. From Omori, the prisoners have watched Tokyo burn. On March 9 through 10, 1945, Operation Meeting House, the firebombing of Tokyo, killed an estimated 80,000 to 100,000 civilians in a single night. B-29 superfortresses dropped incendiary bombs on the densely packed wooden neighborhoods. The fires created their own weather system, a firestorm that consumed everything. From their island prison, the prisoners saw the sky turn orange. They felt the heat. They smelled the burning. Night after night, the bombers came. Yokohama burned. Industrial sites burned. Military installations burned. The prisoners know the war is turning. They can see it in the sky, in the increasing frequency of American aircraft, in the decreasing food rations, in the fear on their captors' faces. But they also know the danger. Rumors spread through the camp. When the Americans come, the Japanese will kill all the prisoners rather than let them be rescued. They will be gathered together and machine-gunned. They will be herded into buildings and burned alive. They will disappear. These rumors are not unfounded. The Japanese military's kill-all policy is documented. In other camps, prisoners have been massacred as Allied forces approached. The prisoners at Omori wait. They watch the sky. They pray. August 6, 1945. A new bomb falls on Hiroshima. The prisoners hear about it through camp rumors. Some kind of superweapon. An entire city destroyed by a single bomb. August 9, 1945. 11:02. A second bomb falls on Nagasaki. The prisoners at Omori do not know that this bomb has exploded. Approximately 10 kilometers from Fukuoka POW Camp No. 2, where Fu spent those months of torture. The prisoners still at that camp, 496 at the time, see the mushroom cloud rise over Nagasaki. They feel the blast wave. They do not know what has happened. Fu is at Omori, far from Nagasaki, but the news spreads. Nagasaki has been destroyed. The city where he labored in the shipyards. The dockyards where his back was broken. August 15, 1945. 12 o'clock noon, Japan time. The Japanese Emperor Hirohito speaks to his people for the first time in history. His voice, high and formal, broadcasts over radio stations across Japan. He speaks in archaic court Japanese that many citizens cannot fully understand. But the message is clear. Japan is surrendering. The war is over. At Omori, the guards suddenly stop. The forced work details cease. The atmosphere shifts. Some guards abandon their posts entirely.
Others, those who were kind, approach the prisoners with apologies. Those who were cruel disappear. Food appears. More food than the prisoners have seen in years. Clothes, vitamins, toilet paper. It seems as if the Japanese were trying in a few days of kindness to make up for the years of deprivation and cruelty, one prisoner later writes. The prisoners stand in the camp, bewildered. After 3.5 years of captivity, after malnutrition and beatings and death, after watching friends die of beriberi and pneumonia, after enduring humiliation and torture, it is over. Fu looks up at the sky. He sees American carrier aircraft flying overhead, unopposed. They are so close he can see the pilots' faces. Then the planes begin dropping supplies. Crates plummet from the sky. One crate of cashmere bouquet soap crashes through the roof of a barracks, missing Major Robert F. Goldsworthy by 3 feet. I thought, what a hell of a thing. To live through prison life only to get killed by a case of soap, Goldsworthy will later write. August 29, 1945. Liberation. Commander Harold Stassen, former governor of Minnesota now serving on Admiral William Halsey's staff, is in charge of POW rescue operations. He positions hospital and transport ships in Tokyo Bay. At mid-afternoon, a flotilla of Navy launches approaches the man-made island of Omori. The first 3 boats carry battle-hardened Marines who immediately secure the perimeter. Then Stassen arrives, accompanied by Navy photographer John Swope. The Japanese camp commander approaches Stassen. He protests that he has received no orders from Tokyo authorizing the release of prisoners. Stassen, standing over 6 feet tall, glares down at the smaller man. According to accounts, he grabs the colonel by the front of his tunic and lifts him off the ground. I have no need for orders from Tokyo to do what I want with these American prisoners, Stassen says. The Japanese commander releases the prisoners. What happens next is captured in Swope's iconic photograph. Hundreds of emaciated men waving handmade American, British, and Dutch flags. Men who are skin and bone, their eyes too large in their skeletal faces, their mouths open in shouts of joy that are almost too weak to hear. Among them is Sergeant Frank Fujita. He has survived 3.5 years of captivity. He has survived Java, Singapore, Nagasaki, and Tokyo. He has survived beatings, starvation, disease, and the constant threat of execution. He has survived being a Japanese-American prisoner of the Japanese. Within hours, the prisoners are evacuated to the USS Benevolence, a hospital ship. They are triaged, registered, checked, cleaned, deloused, shaved, clothed. They are fed whatever they want. Fu eats until he cannot eat anymore. His body, so long denied proper nutrition, cannot quite believe the feast. On September 2, 1945, 4 days later, the formal Japanese surrender is signed aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. Some of the liberated Omori prisoners, now aboard Navy ships, watch from a distance. On September 4, 1945, Fu and 550 other former prisoners are transported to Atsugi Airfield in Kanagawa, Japan. There, reporters from Time and Life magazines swarm the rescued men. They want Fu's story, the Lice sergeant, the Japanese American who was held prisoner by Japan, the man with the secret diary. The story is too good, too dramatic, too incredible. Fu stands there,
blinking in the sunlight, surrounded by reporters and cameras, and he thinks only of one thing: going home. October 1945. Fu re-enters the United States through Tacoma, Washington. He makes his way back to Abilene, Texas, back to his parents, back to the town where he enlisted at 17. He is not the same man who left 4 years ago. His back injury from the Fukuoka beating is permanent. The pain is constant. He struggles with what he calls a number of disillusionments with civilian life. He bounces between jobs. He cannot settle. The diary weighs on him. When he was processed for return to the U.S., officials asked if he had kept a diary. The question terrified him. He knew what would happen. The diary would be confiscated as evidence for war crimes trials. He would be embroiled in legal proceedings. He would have to relive every horror. He lied. He said no diary existed. But it did exist. It was hidden in the wall at Omori, and it was found. The Army recovered it during their sweep of POW camps. They recognized its value immediately. First-hand accounts of Japanese war crimes, names of guards, dates of beatings, evidence of violations of the Geneva Convention. The diary was turned over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI held it for use in prosecuting war criminals. Fu did not know this. 1948. 3 years after liberation, Fu is struggling. His back pain is debilitating. His post-war adjustment is difficult. He makes a decision. If he's going to fall apart, he might as well do it in the Army. He re-enlists in the reserves. Later that year, he boards a ship for the Pacific. As he stands on the gangway, preparing to sail back toward the place of his nightmares, a man approaches. He hands Fu a legal document. It is a subpoena from the federal court in San Francisco. Fu is ordered to appear as a witness in the treason trial of Eva Tagore d'Aquino, the woman known as Tokyo Rose. Tagore was an American citizen of Japanese descent who was stranded in Japan when Pearl Harbor was attacked. During the war, she worked at Radio Tokyo on the 0 Hour program. She called herself Orphan Ann on air and refused to broadcast anti-American propaganda, often smuggling food to POWs like Fu. But after the war, media frenzy identified her as the mythical Tokyo Rose. She was arrested, tried for treason, and ultimately convicted on 1 count based on questionable testimony. She served over 6 years in prison before President Gerald Ford pardoned her in 1977. Fu's connection to the trial. The Japanese attempted to use him for radio propaganda at Omori. His experience provides evidence about Japanese propaganda operations and the coercion of English-speaking prisoners. He testifies. It is one more way his war experience continues to haunt him. December 12, 1950. 5 years after the war, Fu finally writes to the War Department. He asks about his diary. He wants to know if they found it. He wants it back. December 21st, 1950. 9 days later, Fu receives a package. Inside is his diary. All of it. The ledger book, the scraps of paper, the drawings. Also inside is a letter from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The letter informs him that the Bureau held his diary in case it would be useful in the prosecution of traitors or war criminals. It has now been used in multiple trials. The evidence has been recorded. He is free to have it back. Fu holds the diary in his hands. He touches the pages he wrote in candlelight, in latrines, in moments stolen between beatings. He looks at the drawings he made of torture, of emaciated men, of guards with clubs. This is his proof, his witness, his testament. He will use it to write his memoir. 1993, 48 years after liberation. Fu is now 72 years old. He has remarried. He works as an illustrator for the Air Force. Despite his permanent back injury, he and his wife travel the country in their motorhome. His memoir is published. Fu, a Japanese-American prisoner of the rising sun. The Secret Prison Diary of Frank Fu Fujita. The University of North Texas Press releases it with a foreword by military historian Stanley L.
Falk and an introduction by Robert Ware.
The book includes everything: his diary entries, his drawings, photographs from the prison camp. It documents the only Japanese-American combat soldier captured by the Japanese during the Pacific Theater. The New York Public Library names it one of the books to remember. Fu appears on C-SPAN. He is filmed at the Admiral Nimitz Museum. He is interviewed by Ted Koppel on Nightline as part of a debate about the atomic bomb. The History Channel features him. His story is finally told. January 1996, Abilene, Texas. Frank Fu Fujita Jr. dies at the age of 74. He leaves behind his memoir, his drawings, his testimony. He leaves behind a record of survival against impossible odds. He leaves behind proof that an American is not defined by blood, but by choice. The memorial at Fukuoka POW Camp No. 2 was dedicated in September 2015. It stands on Koyagi Island, on the grounds of what is now Koyagi Junior High School. The memorial lists the names of 73 prisoners who died at the camp: Americans, British, Dutch, Australians. The inscription reads, "In memory of those who lived in such harsh circumstances, to which some of them succumbed, and with a profound sense of remorse, we proclaim our fervent hopes for everlasting peace in the world." The memorial was the result of 20 years of research by Akira Komatsu, a Nagasaki taxi driver who documented the camp's history and lobbied city officials for recognition. Fu's watercolor painting Commonplace Beatings is held by the National Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, Texas. It shows prisoners being struck by guards. The title remains its most powerful element. This was commonplace. His diary, the one he hid in the walls, the one that nearly cost him his life, was used as evidence in the war crimes trials in San Francisco. It helped convict Japanese officers of violations of the Geneva Convention. The 2nd Battalion, 131st Field Artillery, the Lost Battalion, is now recognized as the most decorated unit in Texas of any war. Of the 902 soldiers and sailors captured on Java, 163 died in captivity. Most deaths occurred on the Burma-Thailand Railway, or in camps like Fukuoka. Fu's father, Frank Fujita Sr., who came to America in 1914 and changed his name from Tsuneji, who tried 3 times to become a citizen and was denied because of his race, who moved his family to towns with few Japanese Americans so his children could be 100% American. He lived to see his son come home. Fu's mother, Ida Pearl, the white waitress from Illinois who married a Japanese man despite the prejudice, who raised mixed-race children in 1920s America. She lived to see her son survive. The secret diary survived. The blood that Fu thought would betray him, instead, became his identity. "I am comfortable knowing that I have paid my dues to be called an American," Fu wrote in the conclusion of his memoir, "and I stand ready to defend my America if that ever again becomes necessary." He paid his dues in blood.